we are very excited to have her on. Arati Kreibich. She is running for Congress, and she's making her Katie Halper show debut. So fingers crossed she gets the Katie Halper show bump. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Thank you so much for coming on the show.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
You are not just a council member, but you're also a neuroscientist.
I am.
And you've been endorsed by Bernie Sanders and the Sunrise Movement. So tell us about the person you're running against, because I got to say, sometimes it's hard to remember that he's a Democrat.
Meet Trump's favorite Democrat, Josh Gottheimer. Josh Gottheimer has voted 26 times for Trump's pro-polluter, anti-climate agenda.
So he has voted 200 times against the Democratic Party and our policies over the 3.5 years that he's been in office. He has voted in the calendar year 2018, he voted 77% of the time with Trump, right? So clearly not somebody who we know represents our district. We know he doesn't represent our district. We know he doesn't represent what we really need our elected leaders to be. He is somebody whose nickname that he embraces is the human fundraising machine, because he gets millions of dollars from Wall Street, private equity, corporate PAC money, et cetera. And it's tied directly with his votes, right? So one of his first votes was to roll back Dodd-Frank regulations.
Right.
And in the middle of a pandemic, he was out there, only member of Congress, according to the New York Times and Huffington Post, trying to make sure and advocating to bail out private equity payday lenders. So those are not the priorities that we need to have in Congress.
Right. And what was your evolution? Like, how did you actually get into politics?
So I've always been interested in politics, always been interested in the kinds of things that, we need to be part of. So voting was something that in my family, absolutely a right. You needed to do it. You needed to show your support. We need to make that. And to be honest, when I became naturalized, it was one of the things that, I was the most excited about, was the right to vote. It's something that I got on a soapbox about with my students when I taught them as well. It's a big deal. I never thought that I would be in politics in this way. Never. Never thought that this is what I was going to do. It was the Trump election, right? It was a distinct before and after for me. That day I had gone to vote with my boys. We were wearing matching pantsuits. We were, going to vote. We thought it was a historic election. We'd get out to vote with them out in Pennsylvania, came back expecting it to be a victory. I was really shocked that it wasn't. And for me, it has to do with explaining to my boys, what happened. And it was not something that I could adequately do. And then in the weeks and months that followed, we had spikes in hate crimes. We had spikes in bias incidences. And clearly folks in my community, my friends, people I knew really felt a lot more vulnerable than we ever had before. And my 8-year-old son, I didn't realize he was paying attention quite the way he had been. He came up to me one day. He was really worried. He was really worried and upset because he wondered if I was going to be able to stay in America as his mom. He thought I was going to have to be deported. That's what Trump was going to do. He thought Trump was going to deport my parents, his grandparents as well. And at the least, he told me he was worried that my parents were going to be targeted, because they don't speak quite with the same accent I do. And they don't look quite the same way we do. And that was gut-wrenching for me as an immigrant, as somebody who had embraced this and really given back, right? But what was more gut-wrenching was the idea and the thought and realization that there's so many parents who didn't have the luxury of hugging their kids and saying, no, it's okay. We're going to be okay. This is how we're going to get through it, right? And there's so many of my friends and people in my community who rightfully felt more vulnerable, felt more insecure than they ever had before, either because of the way they looked or the way they spoke or who they loved.
Right. Or
and that to me,
there's legal status or the amount of money they had or access to, right?
Exactly.
Medical or legal stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that at the end of the day was really what galvanized me to do a lot more. And I knew I couldn't be on the sidelines in any way, shape or form. And that was it. I, marched in the Women's March. I organized and became an activist in at a different level than I had been before. I organized a grassroots group, really decided to invest in that idea that change has to begin at the local level. And so I stepped up to run for council in my town. Never thought I was going to do that before. Focused on climate change. I won, right? And I won not because, I had some magical political genius. I won because we had a group of volunteers. We organized. I reflected the values that people wanted to see in their elected officials at whatever level. And I focused on climate change over the past couple of years in council. I'm really proud. I'm really proud of the initiatives we've taken. One of my proudest achievements is the fact that I led the initiative for my entire town to have 100% clean, renewable energy at default.
Wow.
Right? Yeah, people can opt out of it if they want to, but it's 100% clean, renewable energy. This is a scale of thinking that we need, right? And it wasn't easy to do. It wasn't simple to do. You had to work across the aisle. I had to talk to folks and explain what we were trying to do and why and what was important and what was in it for them, right? But the thing is, we got it done. Mm-hmm. It was a bold idea. It's a bold idea, bold action that we took against climate change to mitigate changes that are occurring because of climate change. And we were able to get it done because we had the right elected leaders who were going to fight for this. And what this taught me is that, yes, you can't do it alone. You can do it when you're willing to fight for something. And you can actually achieve those bold things that we need to do. And I think that's the kind of scale of thinking that we absolutely need. I mean, it's imperative. We've needed that for a long time, but now more than ever, with all the crises that we have, this is absolutely where we need to go. And so when you contrast that with my Congress member, who I thought in 2016, right, he was that like glimmer of hope that I had. I thought what he was going to be doing was fighting for us in Congress. I was happy he won. Then he not only started to not fight for the kinds of things that we needed, he is undermining kind of policies that we need moving forward. So he voted, his very first vote was to roll back Obama regulations on environment and health. Very first vote. There was no reason for him to be on there. Absolutely none. And he voted that way. He voted for border wall funding. He voted to roll back Dodd-Frank. Then there came 2018, where the entire year he voted 77% of the time with Trump. In the middle of the pandemic, as I mentioned, he tried to bail out predatory lenders.
Wow.
The event that made me run for Congress, that made me decide that I was going to primary him, was almost exactly a year ago, right? We learned about the humanitarian crisis at the border. We learned about family separation. We learned about kids that were in cages and the fact that we weren't even giving them toothbrushes or blankets. And I remember those videos. I'm sure we all do. The audio of the kids crying, all of that. We were heartbroken, all of us here. We were, all over the country, I think, when we saw the kinds of things that were happening. And then 2 weeks later, there was an emergency appropriations bill that came up in Congress. My Congress member was the one who led the charge to make sure that there was no guardrails, there were no accountability in that bill. Published reports show that he was the one who led the charge to make sure that there was no accountability.
Wow.
When he did that, I felt, and I knew that as a former supporter, he had made me morally complicit in that decision-making. And much the same way that I did with when my child came to me, I knew I just couldn't sit there anymore. I couldn't let that happen, right? And I felt responsible for the kinds of things that he was doing because I had helped him. Yeah. And I knew that it was time that we needed somebody else who was actually going to represent the people, who was actually going to be doing this because we really needed somebody who represented our values in Congress. And I will say that recently, I think a couple of weeks ago, there was a news report that came out. So those millions of dollars that were appropriated with no accountability, all the things that we thought were going to happen, where we thought that they were going to be misappropriated, that it wasn't going to go to humanitarian aid, it wasn't going to go to medicines, and all those that has come true. Mm-hmm. Essentially, there was a report from the Government Accountability Office that actually talked about how a bunch of that money, instead of going to medicine and humanitarian aid, went to things like ATVs and other issues that they were not supposed to go for.
Right.
So we know And he knew, right? We knew that this was going to happen. He knew this was going to happen. And not only did he let it happen, he enabled it. And he has voted with Trump on his anti-immigration agenda more than 26 times in the 3.5 years he's been in office.
What makes him even, you may not know, but why does he even identify or run as a Democrat?
That is a really good question. And I don't know, because he's clearly not.
Right. Maybe it's just like that way the district runs is usually maybe he just thought it'd be more strategic or expedient.
So I think his politics tends to be transactional. So yeah. I think that has a lot to do with it. I'm not interested in transactional politics. I think we need transformational change. I'm interested in politics that is actually about helping people, because that's at the end of the day what government is about. And that's not idealistic. That's literally what it's about. That's the whole point of the social contract. That's why I became a council member. That's why, those are the ideals that I embraced when I became a citizen of this country. And I truly believe in them. We have a long way to go, but we're not going to ever get anywhere to build a system that actually works for everybody unless we have political leaders who actually believe in that as well.
And was he false advertising or did he change? Because you said you supported him. In fact, when I was Googling a photo of you for the thumbnail for this, and I saw you with him, I was like, did someone photo? And it was his Facebook page, and it was like, proud to be with her, with these people, and you were there. And I was like, did someone Photoshop this in, like at a political oppo against Kreibich's campaign?
No, right. So we had a horrible Tea Party dude as our Congress member for 10, 12 years before, right? So we had been trying to get rid of him. I had supported, a candidate or two before Josh. He came on the scene. We thought he was our chance. In fact, he was honestly my first non-presidential lawn sign I had on my lawn, because I really wanted it gone. I really wanted, the Tea Party guy gone. And I really did hope that he was going to be really who we needed, right? Because the pre-Trump world, especially with the Tea Party guy that we had, I thought, all right, well, this guy is at least going to be a Democrat. At least he's going to be better than what we have. Yeah. And that's it. And then the Trump election happened. And look, it was a seismic change, right? It was a seismic change for so many of us, this election. It, for those who weren't woke up quite a bit. Those who had been woke for a while got even more frustrated and angry and upset, depressed in other ways. I thought, in NJ5, there's been a real change. We've had so many organizations, especially women's organizations or women who came together to fight and to be activists.
Just so people know, that's New Jersey's District 5, just because,
And we really thought that this was going to be the same thing with our Congress member, right? When he saw that Trump was elected, nobody thought that this was going to happen. We thought, well, of course he understands what you need to do now, which is not to be this conservative, person. I mean, he tries to pretend that he's a moderate, but he's clearly not. He's clearly on the more conservative side of the spectrum. I think he was ranked one of the, top 5 House conservative Democrats.
Wow.
We are not top 5 conservative districts in NJ5. So
is he is he pro-choice? Does he tick that box?
He does. So he does play a lot of lip service, right? Yeah. So he does tick the box of being pro-choice. Right. But nowhere in there is his real leadership. And really, we don't just need somebody who's pro-choice. We need somebody who's always going to be there and fight for us all the time, right? Yeah. And so he voted. There was a bill that came up much early on, and one of the provisions in that bill was really about heartbeats and in how where abortion lies. And he voted yes for that. And it was a relative minor bill, as he put it. I would never have voted yes on that. And it doesn't matter how minor that is, right? It doesn't matter if it's one bill. Because those, as a woman, reproductive choice and reproductive justice is really what I'm about. Yeah. And that's what we need. We need people who have a very clear-eyed sense of not only what you stand up for, but who you center, right? In these conversations and how you advocate for them. And he's not a fierce defender of women or any other folks who feel marginalized or unheard.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because a lot of Dems are good in rhetoric and symbolism on things like immigration stuff. I mean, I remember you brought up the stuff about the kids not having toothbrushes and they slept with like aluminum blankets. And I remember there was this viral video of a woman a lawyer being kind of like schooled by these judges who couldn't believe she was saying these things. She was like arguing that it was sanitary, that it wasn't unsanitary to not have toothbrushes. And then it turned out this woman was a Justice Department appointee who had been appointed by Obama.
Yep.
Which I remember was like, oh yeah, so this is like, yeah, there is a lot of performative stuff. And then at the end of the day, and I think it's not that hard. I think a lot of people go to one extreme or the other, where Trump is this total aberration with no connection to the past, or he's not, or on the other hand, people say he's not unprecedented. And I think the truth is he's both.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And I think for too many people, we have gotten to the point where we just say that Trump is the entire problem.
Yeah.
Right. And we know that that's not true.
Right.
Because when he's gone in 2021, we have a huge mess. We have systems that we have perpetuated for centuries that we need to dismantle. And we need to take ownership of that. And we need to take responsibility for that.
Right. And if we get rid of him next term, I mean, that's great. But like, it's not going to change the conditions that gave rise to Trump.
Exactly.
So you'll have another one.